Good morning, everybody. Thanks for joining our first webinar of 2024. My name is Mark Sapsford. I'm the Senior Business Development Manager of Paycheck. And for those that don't know, new to Paycheck, we provide truly traditional, fully managed payroll services with service and flexibility being at its core. So if you're not already currently a Paycheck client, then please reach out to us through email, LinkedIn, or our website, and I'll be happy to set up a call with you to discuss our services against your current provision. Now, last time, if you joined our last webinar in November, we invited the attendees to vote for the subject of our next webinar. And we're here today to present you the results of that, which is the majority voted for how a well-structured employee benefits package can assist your employees with the cost of living crisis, which is obviously very prevalent in this current time we're in. So we are delighted today to be joined by our partners from Mattioli Woods, Adrian and Graham, who will be presenting for us today. There is a Q&A sections to the right of your screen, so please feel free to add any questions that you may have as we go through the webinar, and we can cover those off at the end. If we get lots, then don't worry, we won't miss you out. If we run out of time, we will pick those up and respond to you directly at the end. We'll also be launching another poll for the votes on our next webinar topic. So do put vote on that once it's open at the end of this webinar. So without further ado, I will hand you over to Graham. Thanks, Graham.
Thanks, Mark. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to today's session, where we'll be looking at how employee benefits can assist employees with cost of living challenges that we've been seeing over recent times. I'm joined today by my colleague, Adrian Firth, who regularly speaks with employees on this very subject. But before handing over to him, perhaps we should just put the worries of our employees and our colleagues around their personal finances into a bit of context and look at why it's important to address this subject as part of our overall strategy for well-being in the workplace. I think it's fair to say that it's becoming the norm that well-being and benefits are more than just your earnings. It's about striking a balance between our benefit choices and the areas of need that our employees have. We tend to put our benefit choices into three interlinked categories. That's physical, mental, and financial. So for a good example, our pension and fair pay for our job is financial well-being, and private medical insurance or health cash plans would come under our physical well-being, and so on. And as the product choices go on, each one contributes towards overall well-being. And I think it's this that will drive employee benefits in the immediate future. Alongside this, I would also venture a view that there may be a subtle or maybe not so subtle shift in the way that we deliver benefits, and move away from doing things to people, whether they like it or not, to one where employees choose for themselves what they want and when they want to access a particular product or service. A breaking down of the old way, perhaps, where senior people would select a suite of benefits that suited them and everyone else had to have them, whether they wanted them or not. Part of this has been because in the past, largely benefits has been a synonym for insurance, group life assurance, group income protection, health insurance. Generally things that are designed to provide financial support when bad things happen. Now, insurance appeals to people who are looking for security and peace of mind. This isn't a problem in itself, but it doesn't contribute necessarily to employee engagement or helping employees with their day-to-day finances and the challenges around cost of living. So rather than just purely focusing on pensions and insurance benefits, perhaps we should look at how employee benefits can equip employees with the tools and the skills to self-care. And briefly, before I pass over to Adrian, I think it's worthwhile looking at why employees are struggling with the current cost of living and where they're learning their financial skills and how they cope on a day-to-day basis with financial challenges. Now, some of these statistics on screen might be quite surprising, but it shows exactly what's lacking in terms of financial knowledge in the workplace, and therefore potentially causing significant issues in the workplace. If we look at how prepared new entrants are when they come into the workplace, and it's no surprise that they're perhaps lacking in financial awareness. Of course, we still don't teach financial capability in schools, colleges, or universities. So it's often falling on the shoulders of employers to help educate employees before they get to the point of a financial crisis. So for example, just looking at some of these statistics, taken from people that are considered millennials or Generation Z, 59% can't read a payslip properly, and 29% don't know what happens if they don't pay their council tax. Now, we can see that 3 and 4 children will talk to their parents about money, but that doesn't necessarily translate into action. 50% don't save regularly, and 68% find keeping up with credit commitments and day-to-day bills a burden. So if we're not teaching the topic in the workplace and employees aren't getting education, then where are they learning their financial habits? Well, mostly from parents. But again, if we look at how financially prepared average parents are in the UK, we're seeing a circle of poor financial capability, which demonstrates the need for financial education. So speaking of financial education, I'm now going to hand over to my colleague Adrian, who heads up our financial wellbeing services at Mattioli Woods, and he can talk you through how we approach the cost of living issues with both clients and our own employees. Thanks, Adrian.
Thanks, Graham. I really appreciate the introduction and an introduction into what I think is a very important topic, although I'm bound to say that because I spend the vast majority of my time talking to groups of employees about things like the cost of living, and as we'll see in a moment, some of the other financial issues and financial products and financial services, which I think are really important for everybody to have a handle on. I think one of the main overriding points about the things I'm going to go through is that people don't know what they don't know. So because we haven't taught people how they're supposed to behave with money and finance, and as Graham mentioned, it's not taught in schools and colleges or universities very, very much, we should really be taking the time to actually tell them how they're supposed to be managing their financial affairs without being intrusive. What I'm going to be able to show you on the way through are just some little bits of topical information which are educational, but which get people to take positive action with their money and their finances. And that's the key thing. We're not trying to bamboozle people with financial science in any way. We are actually just trying to be really simple, nice, clear, plain English, no acronyms, no jargon, just trying to help people understand how to manage their money and their finances and put some little simple steps in place which help them with money and finances, but also help them to understand how their employee benefits package actually benefits them and how much money they're saving by using it. So all these things are interlinked together. But I thought it would be interesting for us on the session to actually have a look at what's changed. Why are we on this webinar talking about the cost of living? Well, there's been a number of changes over the last few years, which have culminated in meaning that there are pressures on us and our day-to-day finances. Now, I don't need to remind you of the lockdowns and the COVID. No sooner did we come out of that period than we now have a war in Eastern Europe, which has been raging on for a while now, and we've got instability in the Middle East. Now, those are all geopolitical things, but what it means to us as individuals is that it's had a knock-on effect on the costs of goods and services, really around raw materials, and I'll cover energy last of the three. Now, you might think this slide is all about bad news because it's all the things that have influenced the cost of living. But I want to try and put a good news slant on some of these things in that they're slowing down. They're not as bad as they were. Now, we take our information from the Office of National Statistics, and this information on screen affects all of us on here. So you yourselves as delegates on the webinar, but the employees that you represent as well. Now, the first one on the list, these figures have been updated, and I can only apologize, but we needed to get legal approval for using these slides from our lawyers. And the Office of National Statistics updated this information a few weeks ago now. But nevertheless, the main principles are true in that food and catering, if we go back to December 22, there were huge increases. I mean, literally, you remember the headlines that food was running away on price increases. That slowed quite significantly. And for December 23, we were at or around 8%. I can confirm that that number's dropped back to just a little bit over 6%. So as you can see, the pressures on our budgets for the things that we have to do, like buying food, are just starting to rein in a little bit. Fuel is always an interesting one because the vast majority of employees need to put fuel in their cars to drive around, get to work and back, and go to meetings and things like that. So it does have quite an effect on our cost of living. When I did this a couple of weeks ago, I was raving on about the fact that the fuel was much lower than 141 that you can see there for unleaded in December 23, but actually it's crept back up and is back at that same level again there. But that's because that cost goes up and down like a fiddler's elbow. It's one of those things that we need to build into, our monthly budgets as it rises and as it falls, because some months we may have money left over from that. Other months we may need to commit a little bit more money to it. Of course, energy is the big driver for all of this because it underpins the costs of goods and services, moving things around the country, etc. And when we were looking at energy and gas, if you remember, a year ago, the government had to step in and cap the price that energy providers could charge at 2,500. Of course, it wasn't 2,500; it was 2,100 because we had a winter fuel allowance of £400. So that was misleading in itself. And the figures that we use are misleading also because they're based on an average UK household. And there is no average UK household because nobody lives in a 2 up, 2 down terraced house with 2.5 people living in it. Everybody is, either one way or the other, higher energy usage or lower energy usage, depending on the circumstances. But if we use that way in which we show it for the average UK household, it hasn't really significantly come down. In the current period that we're in right now, the average price being £1,928 is only a shade below the 2,100 that we had previously. However, again, I want to put a good news slant on this in that it is due to come down from the 1st of April to 1,690 for the average UK household. But can I underline the point that it is however much you use, you pay for it. So the price might be coming down, but if we do leave lights switched on, if we do have our thermostat running all day long, putting the heating on, we are going to pay more. Whereas if we were slightly more energy efficient, we might be able to save those £5 here, £10 there. And that's what we're after when we deliver financial education for people. And those fivers and tenors add up to a significant amount of money over the course of the year. So we know what's changed and what financial pressures we have. As I have some time spare during the presentation today, I thought it would be a really good idea if we actually look at the things that are affecting all of us and some of the things that we talk about. Now, there are dozens of things people can do to try and alleviate some of the pressures of the cost of living on their personal finances. I'm just going to run through three that I think everybody should be doing around now in the year when you're spring cleaning your finances and thinking about it. And this affects all of us on here. So it doesn't matter who you are or how much money you earn. If we're not doing some of these good financial things that we should be doing, then we are going to lose out on our standard of living, unfortunately. So one of the main things I wanted to highlight, if we're thinking about all of our money here today, is insurance. Now, I don't know if any of you have renewed your car insurance or home insurance or travel insurance recently, but you will have found that the cost of it has gone up significantly. Now, year on year, 12 months up to today's date, the cost of insurance on average is up by 50%. You did hear me right. It's 50%. Now, I think everybody on this webinar will probably have an insurance policy during the year that's come up for renewal. So let me give you one quick tip on how to handle that insurance renewal. You need to be searching for a new insurance policy online using the supermarket shopping kind of sites. Whether you're a Meerkat or an opera singer is up to you. But you need to be looking for the insurance between 22 and 27 days before the insurance is due to renew. Why is that? Well, there are algorithms running online in the background, which means the cost of insurance is very high and starts to come down to the lowest point, which is between 22 and 27 days before the renewal. But if you leave it to the last minute, that price goes back up and is quite high again. So all of us can do that. If we've got a little note in our diary, then we'll know what we've got coming up. We know that magic window of opportunity, 22 to 27 days. And we can use those online comparison sites to find a good deal somewhere within that window and keep the cost low. I should mention, if you're one of those people who's just renewed like a car insurance and were costed a lot of money to renew it, go back and do it again and have another look, because you can leave your policy and transfer onto a newer one that might save you the 20, 30, 40 pounds a month, which again adds up to a lot of money over the over a full financial year. Now, with 5% interest on cash, you're all expecting me to tell you about savings accounts, and I'm not actually. I'm going to tell you about just a little thing that everybody can do, which is to switch your current account. Now, everybody's got a current account, but the vast majority of people on this webinar will have had it for the last 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, if not longer, and never even considered changing it. Well, I wanted to let you know that the new challenger banks or new current accounts, they do exactly the same thing as your old current account. You might find that you actually get paid interest on the money that you're holding in the bank if you switch across to a new one. But more importantly, you might find that you actually get paid to move or switch your current account to a new provider. Now, there's a government-backed switching service that makes it very easy online. It'll take you 20 minutes to fill in an application form. They'll go away and set that up for you, and then they do all the hard work. So they move all your standing orders, all your direct debits. They also put a transfer on there. So if something goes into your account, it'll be transferred to your new one. And you could earn anywhere between 125 and 175 pounds, as at today's date, to move your current account to a new provider, because lots of the newer current accounts are actually paying you to move them. So again, if you're struggling with the gas and electric bill and you want to add an extra 125 to 175 pounds onto your bill to give you some breathing space, well, that's one really quick, easy way of doing it. And you'll find you get a better current account as well at the same time. Just lastly, something that's been in the press quite a lot recently is council tax, because we're coming up to the end of the tax year. And then obviously our local councils will all add usually the maximum 5% onto our bills, and they'll go up again. Just very quickly, if you live in a house that was built before 1991, you might want to just take some time out to check if you're in the right council tax band. Because back then we didn't have enough surveyors in the UK to go around and survey all of the properties in the United Kingdom. And so they just got put into bands based on areas and roads and things like that. Now, if you are going to look into this, and this is, again, there's a lot of news headlines about this kind of stuff at the moment. There's good news and bad news with this. The good news is, if you find yourself in the wrong tax band, and there's loads of information online about how to do this, but you challenge your council and move into a cheaper band, not only does that save you a monthly amount of money, but you're also entitled to receive back some of the overpayments you've made in previous tax years. So you'll find you get a big check sent through to you as well. However, if you challenge the council and they find that you should be in a higher tax bracket, well, obviously you're going to pay more per month. But they do actually reserve the right to review your neighbour's council tax bandings as well at the same time, if they find that a group of properties are in the wrong banding. So not only will you end up paying more money, you'll be really unpopular with your neighbours as well. Again, loads of information online if you want to go and have a look at that. But again, for some people, you can challenge that, and you could get yourself a considerable amount of money back. Now, as I said before, these are just 3 very quick spring cleaning your finances ideas, which I think everybody should be having a look at. There are dozens and dozens of things, and we can talk more about, wider, financial skills and things we should all be doing. But it's back to the old basis of, if nobody tells you, you don't know you should be doing these things. So at least I hope they were a little bit useful for you in your finances, and you get the idea of some of the things that we talk about when we're sharing ideas with employees about the cost of living. There is also one other thing. I was speaking earlier about the good news items, in that the cost of food has been reined in, the fuel prices have been reined in and are lower than they were 12 months ago, and we're seeing drops in the prices of gas and electricity. Sitting alongside that is one other challenging thing which I think we all need to be aware of, because it is something which is going to be affecting not just us, but also the employees of the companies that we work for as well. And it's really, really important. And that is interest rates, which again, unless you've been living in a cave, you will have appreciated the fact that they've been on the rise and they've risen to quite a significant level. Now, this hasn't been an issue for anybody over the last 10 or 11 years or so, because as you can see from the chart here, we've been struggling to break 0.5% or get anywhere close to 1%. And so if we're a saver, we haven't really been earning any interest. And if we're a borrower, well, we've been able to do so at very low rates. Now, the Bank of England meet every 6 weeks or so. I'm expecting they'll meet in the next 2 weeks or so and have another chat about rates and see what they think. But just to let you know that the current rate is 5.25% as a base rate. Now, that's really important to us because that's the benchmark upon which all financial institutions set their products and services. So they would charge a little bit above that and make their cut off the base rate of 5.25. It was surprising at the last Bank of England meeting that they left the rates where they were, because we expected them to fall in line with the falls that you've seen on the previous slide. And I think the fact that the rate stayed the same may be an indication that those rates are going to stay higher for longer than we'd anticipated as economists looking at these kinds of things. Anyway, you want to know why this is important to you and your employees. And I think the first reason why it's important is because slightly good news in that we're earning interest on our money, but that comes with a challenge of its own. Now, we have something called savings interest allowances, which gives everybody in the UK an allowance of how much they're allowed to earn in interest before they pay tax on that interest that they're earning. Now, if you're a basic rate taxpayer at 20%, then you're allowed to earn £1,000. If you're a higher rate tax rate payer at 40%, that drops down to £500. Now, if we have significant amounts of money in the bank and we're earning 5% interest on that money, we're going to use those allowances up really quickly. So we need to be aware that we should move some of that money into an ISA, an individual savings account, and that's going to protect it away from savings interest. And that's important because we'd be paying tax on our savings on money that went through the tax system in the first place. So effectively a double taxation. And one area where the Chancellor is just starting to see the benefits of that, as tax bills are going to be sent out to people for them to pay their savings interest tax this year. I was asked a couple of weeks ago by somebody, how do they know? Just to let you know, all financial institutions report directly into His Majesty's Revenue and Customs, and they do calculations, and they will send you a tax bill if you owe tax on it. Of course, the other thing that we need to bear in mind with high interest rates is an increase in the cost of borrowing, especially around mortgages at the present time, which is, again, a real hot topic and something which is meaning that our employees are struggling more than ever because of the increased costs of mortgages. Now, there's a rule of thumb with mortgages, and I'll try to help you understand it. And that is that for every £130,000 that you borrow, 1% equals £100 worth that you additionally have to pay back. And so if you think of blocks of £130,000, well, you're on the right tracks. Imagine if you do have a £130,000 mortgage over 25 years. This is not exact numbers, but roughly you would have been paying about £585. And if the interest rate went up by 1% on that 130,000, it would then be £682, and so on and so forth. Now, we're not just seeing rises of 1% at a time here, but if you project backwards 2 years or 3 years, and people have mortgage rates at 2.25, 2.5%, Well, now, as you can see from the chart, they're going to be at 5.5, 5.75, and that's a very big increase. And so again, when trying to help employees, we need to educate them around that. There's one quick rule of thumb with this, in that if you're coming to the end of a deal, you need to start negotiating 6 months in advance and get a mortgage offer 6 months in advance. Why do you do that? Well, because it lasts for 6 months. So during that 6 month period, if rates happen to rise, you know you got the best rate you could possibly get. But if rates start to fall, well, you can get rid of that offer and move on to a lower one and a lower one, right up to the point where you need to move on to a new mortgage product. And employees do have to move on to a new mortgage product because they don't want to end up on the standard variable rate for mortgages, because that's way higher than 5.25%. It's between 7 and 8%, so it's very, very high. So we do need to get help to people who do have mortgages, and those are going to be renewing. And that goes the same for ourselves as well in our own circumstances, is to get onto a broker and get negotiating that. So let's move on and look at some of the solutions that we can put in place to help with the cost of living. And it won't surprise you to know that I think that education is at the heart of helping people through this difficult time, because you don't know what you don't know. And if we can help people and put ideas in their minds, then they can go away and use those ideas to try and improve their financial circumstances. There are, of course, a group of people who always say, well, we could just pay people more. And that's great. You can pay people more to help them with the cost of living. But remember, they haven't got the education and the knowledge to go with that higher pay. So they're not going to use the higher pay properly. They're still going to be affected by the increased cost of living. And so we're going to come full circle and come back to needing to educate them with that higher pay that you give them. So why don't we just talk to people in the first place? We're going to have a look at what we do here at Mattioli Woods for our own employees. And I don't want you to think that because we're a financial services firm that our employees are any more savvy than any others. Of course, we do have a cohort that are financial advisors and regulated and deal with this stuff all the time. But we've also got other functions at Mattioli Woods. We've got our HR, our IT, our facilities, and they're normal people like you and I. So we do a lot to try and help them with their money and their finances, because we're not going to award inflation busting pay rises to help out with the cost of living. Rather, we would try to help people to manage that money better in the first place. And the single most important thing, looking at what I've already been through, is having good budgeting skills and making sure that we anticipate what our budget is going to be and how much money we need to live our financial lives and maintain our standard of living. And so what we tend to do with our own staff is, well, first of all, before we get into career stages, is that we try to instill in our younger employees a base level of knowledge. Now, anybody's free to join our sessions, but we have what's called a Financial Wellbeing Foundation course, and that looks at 4 key areas that everybody should have a basic knowledge and understanding of finances through. And those 4 key areas are, first of all, taking control of your finances. And that includes things like having a budget, making sure we give all of our money a job to do, making sure that we've started an emergency fund to look after us, and making sure the basics that we pay our bills on time, and have a level of security from starting the savings journey. We then move on to looking at another topic area, which is borrowing, making sure that we don't become over indebted, covering issues like credit scoring, short-term and long-term borrowing, credit cards, store cards, overdraft facilities, and that all-important mortgage information that people need. Again, the third element of our foundation course that we cover with all staff is saving and investing. So starting the savings journey, making sure we build an emergency fund, make sure our savings are in the right place and earning a reasonable level of interest, and then think about the larger things that we want to achieve with our lives, whether that's buying a home or moving to a bigger house over time, starting a family, planning for the future. Those kinds of things we can build into our savings journey. And then lastly, of course, we cover pensions and retirement, because if we think the state are going to look after us when we get older, I'm really sorry, but they're not going to. Other than the state pension, where again, there's been lots of changes recently, it is up to us to make sure that we save for our own semi and permanent retirement. People are working for longer, which is good news around keeping social groups around us for longer, but we are nevertheless going to have to supplement our income at some point when we move to being part-time, and we need to understand the pension freedoms and how they work. So those are our 4 elements of basic financial well-being in the workplace. And then from then on, after the foundation course, we can then look at career stages, helping those in their early career to have, a good financial plan for the future, helping those in the mid stages of their career who've got a lot of financial pressures on them, don't forget, because when we're in the mid part of our career, we tend to have a generation above us which we may need to care for at some point, and a generation below us that we may need to care for as well. So a lot of financial pressures in that area. And then of course those in their late career to retirement, understanding their choices and how they can structure their retirement. I know, after all, I haven't quite stuck to the plan at the moment, but I think a lot of us would like to be, building in things like being mortgage free by 53 and those kinds of parts of our financial well-being. And alongside everything else, and those, the basic foundation course, then the career stages, we also keep things moving along with a regular selection of webinars and recorded content and pieces of information that we drip feed out to not only our own staff, but also our clients as well. Just to give you a flavor of what we've looked at over the last 12 months, we've included topics like living well and eating well, which is also good for your finances because some healthy choices are actually some of the cheaper choices. We've looked at how to create emergency funds and how much needs to be in an emergency fund. We've looked at financial related mental well-being and avoiding things like financial scams and frauds, which are unfortunately on the rise at the moment. Fraudsters are wanting to get hold of our hard-earned investments and savings. We've even delivered a session which is around the dangers of day trading and cryptocurrency, which again is something that's on the rise, and an area where you can lose an awful lot of money very quickly if you're interested in that kind of area. These have proved valuable, not just with our own staff, but with our clients as well. Because all our employees are facing exactly the same situations and circumstances. So it's just a way to share information and help each other out. I know one of the questions that someone will put in the right hand side is, how's that shown up in staff opinion surveys and things like that? I'm afraid I can't share any empirical evidence with you, but we are just about to start our own staff survey at Mattioli Woods. So fingers crossed that some of that hard work we've put in over the last couple of years means that it's reflected in those. So thank you for bearing with me. I hope it's been really useful to have a look at that information. And without further ado, I'm going to pass you back to Graham, and I'll come back and probably handle a couple of questions at the end. But back to you, Graham.
Thanks very much, Adrian, and some really useful information and tips there. So I know what I'll be doing come insurance renewal time next year. So following on from Adrian's comments around education and assistance for employees in respect of cost of living challenges, I'm just going to finish off now by covering a few key points around benefit provision and how I think this can support employees with the challenges that they're facing. One important area that can provide support for employees is to use salary exchange, or salary sacrifice as it's known, for the deduction of their pension contributions. Now, over the past year or so, we've seen an increase in the number of employees that are asking whether they can stop making their pension contributions. We know that saving for retirement is important, but for some, it's difficult to see the logic in prioritising saving for a benefit that they're not going to realise for many years over having disposable income now, and particularly when there's pressure on their current budgets. Now, salary exchange doesn't necessarily solve this conundrum, but it does give employees the opportunity to make their contributions in a more cost-effective way. With salary exchange, contributions are deducted prior to tax and national insurance deductions. Therefore, employees obtain relief at their highest marginal tax rate, 20% for basic rate taxpayers, and 40% for higher rate taxpayers. But in addition to that tax relief, they also don't pay any national insurance contributions on that salary reduction. And therefore, in the current tax year, a basic rate taxpayer saves an additional 10%, and higher rate taxpayers can save an additional 2%. Now, the tax rates that are shown here on the screen apply to employees who are resident in the UK, excluding Scotland. So in Scotland, there are different tax rates, but the basic principle is still the same. And alongside this, salary exchange also gives the employer the opportunity to make savings in employer national insurance contributions, which potentially gives budget for additional benefits that can help support employees further. Now, against this backdrop, and considering the provision of financial education that Adrian's spoken about, I think understanding and reviewing benefits and then communicating how these can support employees is a really smart idea. There are some benefits that very clearly help employees from a financial point of view. A great example is health cash plans, which rebate some of the annual costs of things like dental and optical treatments. Now, alongside this, many of the cash plan providers, and also those of things like group life assurance, income protection, etc., provide routes to access to discounts and savings on retail and leisure spending, which helps people find additional ways that they can make further savings in their day-to-day budgets. And I've got a colleague that's an absolute whiz on this and is always giving hints and tips on where those savings can be made. So it's a really good way of just delivering some tangible savings. Now, financial concerns are one of the major causes of mental wellbeing challenges, and this can often result in absence from the workplace and potentially more serious health concerns. So in amongst some of these ancillary services that we've spoken about, many providers now also offer access to employee assistance programs, which can deliver all kinds of support to employees that have concerns. Now, this isn't just restricted to emotional and sort of counselling requirements, but it can also offer practical support as well. One of my clients was telling me recently about an employee that was struggling to remortgage at an affordable rate of interest because they'd previously been self-employed. The employee was directed towards the EAP that was provided through their group life assurance. They spoke to somebody there that was able to give them some more information and some practical tips, and were then put in touch with a mortgage advisor who was able to secure them a mortgage offer at a much better rate than they were even able to get with their own bank. So it was a major concern that was beginning to give the employee some worries and anxiety that was dealt with very simply and very efficiently. And for situations which are more complex and may impact more significantly on an employee's emotional or physical health, these services can also include access to virtual GP provision, often on a 24/7 basis, and this may actually be easier in some cases to access than their own individual GP. Now, we know, of course, that the NHS is under more pressure than ever, so services such as these can help employees access that support and get back to work healthier and potentially wealthier. And it's all well and good thinking about putting in a programme of education, but who's going to deliver it? Now, as you might expect, the financial services world is rife with regulatory duties and responsibilities, and these need to be met. And Mattioli Woods, as you'd also expect, take our responsibility to do this very seriously. All of our education is written in plain English, it's jargon-free, and is all approved by technical and legal experts. And importantly, it is education. There's no selling of products or selling of financial advice. We deliver education and guidance so that employees can self-help and make better informed financial decisions. But there's also a wealth of help online for companies to assist their employees. There's lots of free resources from budget planners to online webinars, accredited courses, and of course, our old friend Martin Lewis and his Money Saving Expert website, which is superb, by the way. But equally, I would recommend that you tailor a communication program and a program of education and well-being that's unique to you as an employer and takes into account the kind of support that can be given through the benefits that you offer. Finally, ideally, all employees would take responsibility for their own financial well-being, but for many reasons, this isn't always possible. And whilst it may not be possible or even desirable for an employer to address and try and solve these issues for them, a combination of relevant education coupled with a programme of benefits that gives routes to savings and also access to support when it's needed can often help alleviate employees' initial concerns, as well as offering them solutions in times of crisis. And ultimately, this is not just good for their own well-being, but it's also good for their productivity. So thank you very much for joining us today. I hope that information has been of help to you and given you some things to think about. We do have some time now to answer any questions that have come in and also any other questions that people want to raise. So I'll hand back over to Mark for the Q&A time. Thanks, Mark.
Thanks, Graham. Yep. So yeah, we have some questions coming through. So great insight there. Thanks to you both. We did record the session as well, so don't worry if you joined in late or you had to pop out to answer the door to Amazon or whatever while the webinar was going on. We will be sharing the recordings next week, and please do link up to us on LinkedIn and those kind of channels as well to get updates. So first question for you, Adrian. I do not get interest on my account with my banker. What do I need to do?
Switch to an account that pays interest. It should be fairly simple to do. I don't know what kind of an account you have, but I would say, if it's a savings account, then perhaps we could switch across to something like an individual savings account, which not only pays a higher rate of interest, but also protects away from any savings interest tax, which we've got to consider. I mean, if you had investments, you would put them into an ISA to protect them from capital gains tax. Our cash is just the same. It moves into a cash ISA. If it's based on a current account and you're not earning any interest, which you won't be doing if you've got one of these really old current accounts that you opened 5 years, 10 years, 20 years ago, then again, we can use the government-backed switching service. We can do that online. And we can move to a current account that pays us interest, gives us some additional benefits, and might actually pay us some hard cash as well at the same time.
Excellent. Thanks very much. Next question. Where can we find information about your foundation course?
Well, our foundation course, I gave you a quick overview on the way through, but it is ours. So again, if you want to come to us and use us to deliver it, then we can share more in-depth information with you. What I would say is, if you don't want to use our foundation course, you can use those 4 headings that I've given you from the recording, and there's tons of useful information online which you can put together. And with that, what some organizations do is just have like mini lunch and learns where an employee will put some helpful information together, because you'll find that everybody's got one employee that's really on the ball and knows all about everything. So again, with a bit of research and making sure that it's correct and is up to date, you can open up a conversation and have a group of people come together and discuss some of this stuff and find useful hints and tips. I mean, it's education is just about sharing information, which we've got tons of, because we've got a lot of researchers who do a lot of work for us and help us to put it together. But it isn't difficult to find free resources online. There's loads of information, but those 4 headings: budgeting, borrowing, saving, pensions, those are the 4 core areas that people need to know about and need to have some kind of a plan for.
Excellent. Thanks very much. Well, I just forgot to mention at the end there about our poll, by the way, which will be open now for you to vote on the next session that you want to hear. We've got another question for you here, Adrian. So I've recently seen providers such as Mintago offering salary sacrifice schemes to enable employees to make NI savings on the cost of groceries from major supermarkets. This would be a valuable benefit for employees, and I would expect take-up rates to be high. Is MW planning to make this available to clients? And would this require reporting the benefit in kind on a P11D, or can it be payrolled? We recently moved away from producing P11Ds, so prefer to do this. Presumably HMRC are happy with using salary sacrifice for this purpose.
Graham, do you want to come back on camera and sound so we can see you? Because I'll refer across to you in a second, but not as far as, I mean, I should explain that we're an employee benefits broker. So we would go out to market and look at a range of employee benefits that an employer might want to put in place. And we don't have any, specific products that we deliver. So if you were saying, well, are we going to implement salary exchange on day-to-day money and food spending and things like that? I think the answer would be no in that regard, because we would look to use salary exchange or salary sacrifice for the main products that a company would have in their armory, like their pension scheme, for instance, where there'd be a significant saving. But on the reporting element, Graham, I don't know if you've got anything to add on P11Ds and things like that.
I'll probably just add a couple of things. I mean, the other side of that was we're always looking at additional voluntary benefits that we can offer through our online propositions. So we're always aware of new products or new services such as this that are coming onto the market, and I think the headlines around it, as you say, they're great. You just have to sometimes consider that the cost that the provider wants to running the scheme as well, alongside that. In terms of the payroll operation of it, if it's running through a salary exchange, you should be able to payroll it. That comes down to what your payroll software is capable of doing, and probably Mark can give a bit more guidance on that. But yeah, anything running through salary exchange, would be treated as a P11D. From that point of view, it's just how you operate your P11D reporting on an ongoing basis, but there shouldn't be any issues with that as far as I'm aware.
Excellent, thank you. And picking up on the P11D and payroll and benefits, that's lots of questions we ourselves are getting at the moment. You may or may not be aware, but for a while now, the HMRC have been talking about dispense with P11Ds, but they didn't ever actually release the date. They have done now, and they're suggesting 2026. So you need to register for payrolling benefits at the start of a new tax year. So you want to start looking at it now, and just let Paycheck, we've got lots of clients already that are payrolling benefits. It's no problem at all. So really easy for us to take care of for you. Next question, what advice do you have for employees who are having to start again following divorce in midlife and may have been subject to pension sharing orders, etc.?
Right, that's a tall order. Again, I would sit down and try and see if you could get a one-to-one meeting with somebody to rearrange their finances and put plans in place. It's obviously a major shock to someone's finances when they go through a major life change. Employee assistance programs are very well set up to cater for this. So if there is an EAP in place, they do have advisors that can help and sit down and put together a new plan. Alternatively, if you've got a financial education provider in place, then again, a one-to-one meeting would be useful just to assess the situation and make a new plan. As well as that, from a company perspective, is to make sure that they adjust all of their paperwork that they have with their benefits as well, because they may have life insurance and need to change who they're giving the benefit of their life assurance to. Obviously, beneficiary forms on things like pensions might need to be updated as well. So it's just an opportunity to have a one-to-one and just review all the aspects of your finances and create a new plan, really, and start again.
Brilliant, thank you. Another question, are there any free resources online to help employees with the cost of living?
I'm happy to take that one as well. Graham's nodding. Yeah, you can have that one. A lot of the information that we come across is from Martin Lewis's website, themoneysavingexpert.com. So again, as far as free resources go, that is the #1 place for people to go and learn money management skills. They can learn the basics. They can also look at topical information from there as well. There is, I'm not allowed to recommend products and services, so I'll put one alongside it, which is the Money Helper website, which is run by government. And again, there's lots of useful information on there as well. Aside from that, there are organizations that run free webinars from time to time. So I'm sure that any kind of generic online internet search will flag up some free resources that people can join. But again, if you want it tailored and you want to include your employee benefits with it and link all of those things together, then unfortunately you are at the point where you'd need to enlist someone like ourselves to help you put that information together, have it legally checked in the background to make sure that you're not contravening any of the regulations in the UK when delivering financial education. But what I'll say on the flip side of that is it isn't expensive. So it's not going to cost the earth. It's relatively cheap in comparison to products that you might want to put in place. So yeah, financial education isn't expensive to deliver.
And that probably moves on to, sorry, go on, Graham.
Yeah, I was just going to add one more thing there. Is look at what your workplace pension provider can offer as well, because a number of the workplace pension providers are now introducing sort of financial well-being and financial education tools and modules and resources into their online offerings for members and through apps as well. So, you know, have a look at that. There's a couple of providers that are a little bit further ahead in that respect than some of the others. But yeah, you know, really improving the situation. So look at what your workplace pension provider has available for employees to use as well.
Excellent. That moves nicely on to the next question. So what's the difference between financial guidance and financial advice?
Well, very briefly, financial guidance is common sense, and financial advice requires a more deep background check into an individual and their circumstances to make sure that they've got a robust financial plan. And if they don't, then there will be a written communication to them that would make which would make product recommendations. Now, financial advice is written and recommended and involves an awful lot of paperwork. For financial education is just very easy to deliver because it's fact and it's common sense and it's guidance. You don't have to do what we're telling you to do, but it's common sense that you do take some of that information on board and go away and do one or two things that improves your financial situation. So me telling you that if you've got a 20-year-old current account and that you can switch it to a new current account, get a better rate of interest, get paid for transferring it across, that's common sense, and that's just guidance. Anyone can do that online.
Excellent, thank you. And our final question, can you let me know how we can help our employees with the subject of mortgages?
Graham, do you want that one?
Shall I jump in on that one first of all? No, that's fine. Obviously, you know, considerations around mortgages are a lot more of a challenge to employees now, as Adrian alluded to during the webinar, that interest rates are so much higher than they were a few years ago. And for many people that are perhaps coming up to remortgage for the first time, for example, they're suddenly facing a situation with interest rates that they wouldn't have had experience of before, and seeing what that means, you know, in pure financial terms, in terms of the repayments. There's a number of things you can do. Obviously, there's, you know, we've spoken about some of the sort of education content that you can provide around that. Some employers will offer access to mortgage brokers, mortgage services. We also have our own sort of in-house service that we can offer through our online solutions, but that gives the opportunity for employees to have a conversation with a very experienced, very qualified mortgage broker, and that's on a no obligation basis, but it just is a route to be able to open up that conversation and maybe, you know, to enlist the help of somebody that can access products that the employee can't necessarily find directly in the market themselves, and give them more choice. And you know, that's something we're more than happy to have a conversation about if anybody wants some further support on that.
And also, if you consider your situation of effectively bulk buying some mortgages because you've got a large number of employees that are all a captive audience in one place at one time, it allows you to negotiate with a mortgage broker a much better rate or a much better deal. So again, I would use the power of buying to put a deal in place that helps your employees and gets them to the right place at the right time at a low cost.
Yeah, brilliant, I do. Okay, well, that wraps up all the questions today. So just extending my thanks to Graham and Adrian again for a great session. I've got my notes certainly in my diary entry on 23 to 27 days. I've got that marked up. Thanks for that, Adrian. That was very helpful. Hope you all found it really beneficial today. Like I say, do please follow us all on LinkedIn. And if you've got any further questions, by all means, reach out to us directly, and we'll be more than happy to help. And please just make sure that you've voted on the polls for us so we know what to present to you next. So have a good rest of the day and look forward to speaking to you all soon. Thanks very much.